Hi. Today we're going to talk about directing your brain to resolve your symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress and create higher levels of wellness and function in your life. And so that's the topic. And I'm Rachel McLeod. I specialize in helping people resolve symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, but just doing the brain work to do so. The brain has a beautiful process for this that is fast, lasting, effective, and reliable. And so when we can get the brain to do what it's supposed to be doing, which is resolving all these symptoms, we see transformation quickly. However, this process in the brain can really be challenged, and so it doesn't do the awesome work it could be doing. And so I'm going to talk about that today and about how we can actually guide our brain and direct our brain to do the healing work we want it to do. We also need to help the brain do the work it wants to do. Because if our brain gets to do the work it wants to do, we then get to do what we want to do, right? You have relationships you want to have, goals you want to reach, businesses you want to build, finances you want to explode into. All these things, your brain needs to go through its process to help you do those things. And you want to go with your brain because it is so much better. This is also how we can prevent things like self sabotage, um, things exploding, and because if we just if we can do this without our brain doing its process, but eventually we're leaving our body and our subconscious mind behind, and our progress and our high performance increases, but we're leaving ourselves, and eventually there's a boomerang effect or a rubber band effect, and we come back, and you don't get to go far from your body and be well. So we want to bring your body and your subconscious programming together with your goals and your dreams and what you want to achieve. And so it's a little different process, but it is not as fast as one would think it is, and it's really, really powerful. And um, gosh, gosh, golly gee, it just it empowers every area of your life. It impacts every relationship that you will get in. And so we want that. Okay. I'm also a mental health therapist, a coach, and a therapist mentor. And so this is my perspective. This is what I help people do. So that's what we're going to dive into. A lot of times I talk about the process, and we're working with the first thing we need is we need to be able to influence the brain to do the healing work it wants to be able to do. It needs to be able to do. It's designed to do. And that there's a gatekeeper that says, are we going to survive, or are we going to process, learn, grow, and rest, digest? And so that's the healing functions over there, or survival functions over here. There's a part of the brain that decides whether we're going to go survival or we're going to thrive. And so we are working with that part of the brain. It is very different than our thinking center. It doesn't respond to logic, reasoning, talk, words, those sorts of things. It's responding to your body. And so the interventions that we want to influence that part of the brain. So we're talking to your body to send signals of safety to that part of the brain, and all of a sudden it will resolve. You'll start resolving symptoms. Your brain, things that your mind and body, your brain were defending you against, your survival system was defending you against. Yeah. Um, all of a sudden start healing and processing, and your brain uses and responds to that stuff very, very, very differently. And it starts the growth and the wellness and those sorts of things. So when we start this journey that I'm going to lay out for you of directing your brain, we want to have that on board first. That's the first ingredient, is that you can influence your brain. If you cannot influence your brain to shift into a healing and processing mode, don't do the rest of this. Don't do any of this stuff. Stay out of your inner world and don't do that, because when we go direct our brain to do the work, we are going to actually bring up distress that is stored in the body, right? You may have read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and it does. And there's a lot of memories and stuck emotion and um, limiting beliefs that are in the body that are quite painful and are very limiting. Uh, and we actually don't need, we want them not in the body like this. This is not how they're supposed to be stored. They're here because they actually didn't make it through the brain's process for being stored in a very different and more effective and healthy way. And so we're working on getting that stuff processed and shifted up in here. So, but if this stuff becomes active in your system, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel the old pain as if it was happening now. Um, and if your survival system responds to that pain and shifts you into survival mode, it's gonna like be trying to make its way up to the top parts of the brain. That part of the brain is gonna be pressing on it and like shoving it back down, and it's gonna build up, and you're gonna feel awful. Maybe panic attacks. This is how all that stuff happens. Panic attack, um, dissociation, feeling like you're in a spiral. Um, Feeling flooded with emotion, that happens here, and it's not pleasant, it's re-traumatizing. And so I don't want you to do this unless you can influence that part of the brain to open up and allow the stuff that's now active to move through the body so it can get stored, and understood and sorted and analyzed, and um, re gosh, all the rewiring happens after that. There's so many beautiful things that happen if we can just get it past that part of the brain. And really, this is all we're doing, right? Now, if you can do that, now I want to show you this other journey that's available. Now we get to say, brain, hey, there's this painful thing going on in my life right here, and let's work on it. And you can actually hold your mind and direct your brain. There's exercises for this and strategies. These are things I teach people in my program, Inner World Transformation, and I teach them in a very specific order so that because that seems to be the way brains can like build a snowball effect of transformation. So, the first thing we're looking for is the stressors that occur in your life. And these can often just be happening and be so overwhelming. But with exercises, we can isolate them and say, hey, brain, this one right here, let's stick right here and let's get all that stuff processed that's in that stressor, right? Maybe there's a conflict at work. Maybe there's when you do your laundry, you just feel overwhelmed. Maybe there's you're driving to work and you have to go over a bridge that you don't like because you've got some phobias, right? That's a stressor in your life, in your everyday life. We want your brain to work with the emotional distress, the somatic distress in there. And so we focus on it and get that stuff. And then we work this lid right here of the survival system to say, hey, let this stuff through. Let the mind body system communication complete, right? Don't interrupt it. That when it closes like this, that communication system between the body and the higher parts of the brain gets closed and interrupted, and that is what causes our symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. So we want to switch that over, and we want to do it again and again and again. And so after I have people start cleaning up their present life, I'm training them to learn how to manually operate and direct their brain to the things they want to heal and resolve. After that, people are feeling very confident. They're like, wow, my brain's working with me. Wow, I can resolve any symptom I want. Come at me, brain. And we gotta, there's a lot in there. So I love that attitude. And um, and then we're going to start the next project. And that is we're going to go through and we're going to direct your brain to work through painful events that have occurred in your history. Again, if you cannot influence this part of the brain, do not do this work. It makes your life worse because we're trying to run a process, a brain function process that gets impaired, especially with when there's more pain in your system. And so when that we want to make sure that's moving fluidly. And so if it doesn't, it's painful, and it, we just don't need that. Okay. We're also, after we work through events, we're going to then work on connection with the self stuff. We've already been starting this, but now we're going to go in a little deeper. We want to know things like, can you see yourself? Can you see yourself in this situation? Can you? Sometimes our emotions are going so wacky and big that we actually can't see the details of ourself in there or other people, right? And so we want to be able to run this process enough so that we can actually get to ourselves in this specific situation, directing our brain to specific areas where we want to see, can we see ourselves? Next thing we want to know in there is, can we have compassion for ourselves? Sometimes the answer really is no. There are strategies for hooking the brain up for self compassion. Maybe it has never been practiced. Maybe it was punished to be self-compassionate. Maybe we got examples of self-pity, and pity is a lower form of compassion. So our brain hasn't been able to convert that pity into compassion. So we want to give the brain, we're directing the brain to build that now. Um, and so we're looking for it. These are, remind you, these are staged, right? Um, then we want to know, can your brain problem solve for yourself? If you can get your brain into a specific area and direct it in here and you hold it here and process and get that all that material through the processor, um, problem solving is a natural outcome of that. And so when we see that coming on, then we know that that loop is continuing, and it's right where we want it. We want solutions in here. We can tell that our function is low in this area, or our wellness. We have emotional or mental spirals in there. We're like, brain, get in there and fix that. We can really work with the brain because the brain is like, I've been trying to, I just haven't had enough support. So now we're teaming up together to get in there and get that resolved. So after someone is practiced with that, mind you, we start using these skills interwovenly, and that happens very fast because brains love to do that. Brains like to do multiple things at the same time, but we focus in one at a time. So we make sure I'm making sure the skill is built, and then all of a sudden it starts happening, weaving together. It's like juggling one ball, and then two, and then pretty soon there's three. The next thing we're going to look at is subconscious programming. And we want to be able to direct the brain to specific programs that we are running that are problematic in our life. Everything runs on a subconscious program. And so there are skills and strategies and exercises we can use to go say, hey, I'm noticing that when I have this conversation with this person, I'm getting irritable, snappy, and argumentative. And so we can go and we can actually pull up the programming for this. There's an exercise, several that I like here, but I have one I really like. But that would pull up the entire coding for that interaction. And then you just grab that and get it processed. But that means you got to get it past the survival system. So that's why we're using those interventions continually throughout this process, because we're helping the brain do work that it is stuck and isn't resolving because the pain in there is too great. And that might be social pain, emotional pain, body, like somatic distress, those sorts of things will block this. So we're escorting, right? And we're only working on the stuff that is more, that it has a hard time making it through the brain's healing process. So we're really escorting the difficult stuff. So we're on the pain hunting area. But what happens is as we get that processed, all of a sudden the brain starts connecting it with all the positives as well. And so it's a higher level process that I don't really worry about too much because it's natural to the brain. We're just going to go do all the unresolved stuff that's usually painful in some way to your brain. Okay, so once we've worked through a lot of the subconscious programming and you have the skills for that, now you've got a whole big skill set. This is way more than what I had coming out as a therapist and what I know most therapists have. So this is high level stuff that really I teach people to do in about 4 weeks. So um, then after that, we're going to boundaries, because boundaries are made up of events, subconscious programming, emotions, unresolved painful emotions, all these things. It's Our boundaries are very complex, and they're designed to bring in more of what we want and keep out what we don't want. So in any area where we're getting what we don't want, our boundaries aren't adapting and doing their job. And when we're processing, the brain will automatically start shifting all of the boundaries to make them more precise and effective and functional for us and our preferences and our desires. So we want to direct the brain to shift the boundaries. By the time we're here in week 5 of my program, a lot of times we've already the boundaries have already shifted so much because we've already done so much work. But now we get to go spot check. We get to say, oh yeah, but over here, I see you improved these areas, but this is one that's a little bit more complex. And so now we have all these skills that we're going to use to really resolve what's going on in those boundaries. So, and those could be boundaries around your self-care. They can be internal boundaries. They can be external boundaries. They could be your responses to other people's boundaries. All of that, we go and we find areas that are impaired and that we need to, and you'll know what they are. You know, by the time you get here, you're like, ah, that. And you and your brain go direct it to resolve that. So, the last thing, by this point, there is a lot of inner world transformation, a lot of upgrading, a lot of health and wellness created. And here is where we'll really go into relationships. You are way higher functioning at this point, and you've outgrown a lot of the current ways of being in your relationships, and it's time to upgrade all of that. It's time to get your brain to look through all that, direct your brain to your relationships. We need to update your view of them, because it will be your view of the people you're in a relationship with will be much less trauma influenced, because a lot of that stuff has resolved, and baggage influenced, and wounding influenced. And so, but you'll need to get more accurate there. And so we direct your brain there. And now brains can do all this work, but and it will if we just keep processing. But I find that if we get directed and we target things, that we can really speed up the level of wellness that's created. We're team working. We can just support the brain, support the brain, support the brain. Healing is going to happen. But if we get directed and targeted in our approach, then we're teaming up with multiple parts of who we are, and we're providing our brain with specific um, and we get a lot of control, and we like that, and our brain likes that, and we just build all this inner teamwork. And so so the directing of the brain is a very specific skill set. It is super easy to get influence the brain to do healing and to get resolving and processing. That's easy. And as a matter of fact, I teach 3 interventions where you can start that now. You can explore my favorite interventions for this work. It's in a free program I offer called Inner World Transformation. That works. Those interventions work for like 95% of people. You'll notice a lot of shifting. You'll notice your brain shifting. You'll manually be able to shift your brain into rest, digest, processing, upgrading mode. And that is awesome. Then there's going to be a time when you want to get specific. You're like, but this area of my life. And that's really where you want to learn how to direct your brain in there. And there are lots of strategies for that. I teach those in a very, like I said, strategic and targeted way. So, um, and that, if you're interested in that, is what my program Inner World Transformation is all about. And so it's about putting the two together, intervention and direction. And these skills and direction skills are so uh, empowering. It's so empowering. And so also, so I invite you to try those things out and try working with your brain like this. And also, if you want me to walk you through your journey personally, there are programs. There's an intensive coaching program and other coaching programs in my on my website that you can look at and see if they are right for you. So I want you to be inspired about directing your brain to do the healing work. I want you to feel inspired that, wow, I can resolve anything, and you can. I have not run into a symptom that a client brings me, or that I have brought myself, that to my own awareness, that has not resolved using this process. And so, because it's just brain function, we're actually just getting the brain to complete its work on it. It's pretty awesome. Some people feel like it's magical. It's not. It's healthy brain function. It's what's supposed to be going on in there. So anyway, wonderful connecting. Take care. Bye.